But yeah, the conspiracy theories, there are so many out there, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I found quite a few, but a lot of them are American. The only ones I could find that were British were about the Queen.
Yeah, that's what mine's about. Mine's about the Queen.
Yeah, it's always about the Queen or about Prince Charles. Prince Charles is meant to be a vampire, by the way.
I thought he was a werewolf.
I don't. Well, it's the one I saw that he was a vampire.
I remember Doctor Who. He was a werewolf.
The Prince of Wales.
Oh, the entire royal family.
The werewolves. I suppose that makes more sense because they can come out during the daytime, then, can't they?
Yeah, and then they all have hemophilia or whatever, which is the condition of blood or condition, which is what is supposedly
that's been passed down the generations, though, hasn't it, for years and years and years. It's quite crazy, but I suppose it does kind of work. But there's also a link to with Jack the Ripper.
That's mine. That one.
Oh,
like
Jesus.
apparently he was Queen Victoria's son, but as me and Zombie were talking about earlier, he wasn't really that. It was just the doctor blaming him or something like that, wasn't it, Zombie?
Well, from what I understand, it couldn't have been Queen Victoria crazy from syphilis, and the doctor was blaming the prostitutes that he kept going to for giving him syphilis. That's why, like, when Jack the Ripper, they could tell he had medical training because he was a doctor. He was cutting people open, and he knew how to cut them open and that sort of thing like that. And it was apparently his doctor taking revenge on, the women that he blamed for the prince going crazy.
So he blamed the women. But that's from Hal, isn't it? That's from the movie from Hal. It's but I mean, you could say the same thing like Prince Diana as well. That's kind of linked to the same kind of thing. But the one I don't know whether that was Victoria, Queen Victoria, supposedly turned the Illuminati against all the women that were invited to the wedding. That was the idea behind that, which kind of a cool idea, but I don't know. I don't know whether that's true. But I think it was dramatized. I mean, firstly, they're women in from Hal. They didn't look like that. There's no chance they look like that. Can you imagine a bunch of prostitutes in the 1800s still having their teeth? They used to sell them when they were 16, so they didn't have them. But what we talking about?
There's a Kids in the Hall bit where he said they were pretending, like, oh, I'm going to get my teeth removed. Like, oh, it's more of a business decision, isn't it?
Well, it's not. You could sell them. Rich people used to use them for dentures, didn't they? It was it was a big thing.
When they were talking about the prostitutes, so it'd be a good business decision for the prostitutes to have their teeth removed.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, if you can sell each tooth for a certain amount of pennies at the time, or what were they? Silver. What was it? Sovereigns, wasn't it? Sovereigns at the time. That's what it was over here. So it would have been like a couple of sovereigns per tooth. It would have been all right. That would have. But going back to Victoria, it could. I think she might have been linked to it. Definitely, because he was a dirty fucker, that Prince Edward, wasn't it? Edbert. But he'd gone away, and the idea was that he caught syphilis when he was away on tour. And I heard, from what I understand, he caught syphilis when he was in India, and then brought it back to the UK. But hey, it's very possible. But they talk about the same with Diana, that it was a conspiracy that the Queen tried to get rid of him because of the impure blood she was bringing to the.
What I've read about that, they killed her because she was pregnant with another child, which wasn't Charles's.
It was Dowdy. Is it named Dowdy? He was a rich hotel owner anyway, wasn't he? He was a where was he from? He's Arabic, wasn't he? He's an Arabic guy. Sure he was. And that's why they tried to get rid of her because of that. But it's just the amount of things that have to go into place. I mean, for example, the Jack the Ripper thing is possible because it's plausible. There wasn't such a massive population. They could have pinpointed who was there, but there was no photography evidence. So trying to find him in the streets of Whitechapel in the 1800s might have been a bit tricky. But that's plausible.
Well, with the first kill that happened, he wasn't about. Like, he wasn't around. He was somewhere else. Like, the grandson of Victoria when
So he
when
physically
the person
couldn't have been.
died. Yeah,
Yeah, but I
it
don't
could
think
have killed the other ones. There could have been more than one Jack the Ripper, but from what I know, he wasn't around for like I think it was 2 kills from what I read up on.
Or the
Yeah, but
idea
they-
that Jack the Ripper could have been multiple people. The fact that it was one person could just be a conspiracy in and of itself. For all you know, it's just 5 random murders that happened, and
Yeah.
they just blamed it on this one evil person.
just to get rid of them, just to kind of rub them under the carpet.
Well,
But
no,
I
it's
think
more or less like the hysteria of it. Like people thinking like, oh, there's this big, crazy, guy going around killing people. It's just one dark figure that they can point to, as
Yeah.
opposed to, the
multiple
randomness.
people doing it.
And,
'Cause if you
and
go-
the fact, I was gonna say, like the fact that they had medical training, it could have just been a doctor or a student who had no moral fucking quandaries about stealing bodies and doing that sort of thing. And they were just testing on prostitutes in order to do whatever they were trying to train for.
I mean, body snatching was around then as well. So I
Yeah.
mean, it could have gone up from body snatching to actually getting parts from women. Sorry, but also
like actual
the
practice.
doctor side of it was never actually 100% confirmed, because they also said butchers could have the same amount of skills. And it was also the huge amount of people coming in and out of London with skills like that.
Well,
But the point that they
thing I
pointed out,
read.
the skill.
Go
Oh,
on,
sorry.
Go on, you
The
go
thing about
first. And then...
the thing about was argued about the butcher part was the anatomy of it. Like, yeah, they could have been that skilled, but the Ripper, he went straight for it and didn't do any damage anywhere else. He had to have direct knowledge of human anatomy, which wasn't common for that time frame for just normal people to have, especially not like butchers. I mean, they knew animals, but animals and people were different.
Yeah, but you get a pig and you butcher a pig and them far off us.
Well, yeah, but to not damage any other organ and
Yeah.
to be that precise,
Yeah,
that's the thing that they went with. Like, he didn't do anything like negative. Like, he had practice.
Well,
And
what
my
I
theory-
read, because it was the doctor of the royal family that accused the grandson of being Jack the Ripper. But when the doctor died, his son burned everything to do with like all his father's notes about the Jack the Ripper. So if he knew that the grandson was the Jack the Ripper, or his dad was like the doctor, it's all gone down with him.
So he got rid of them completely.
Got rid of all the evidence.
But there was also that diary they found not too long ago. But did they find out whether that was a fake or not? It was in someone's attic or something underneath a floorboard. And there was meant to be links to America. It was meant to have been an American doctor, but not a forces doctor, so like a medic in the army that was supposedly doing the killings. But they went back to America because I think it was Philadelphia. That a load of murders continued in the same kind of vein. So the same, like, prostitutes were being killed. But also, I don't know if it's the same guy. There was a hotel somewhere in the US that this guy had changed to be like a slaughterhouse. So
I know who you're talking about. It was during the World's Fair. That's out like towards the west coast, but he had his mansion converted into a torture house. I forget his name. It was I'd recognize his name immediately if you told me, but it was like H something like that. H Holmes.
Wasn't that like the American Horror Story, either the Netflix or the TV show? Didn't they do a series on that?
They did the hotel
sure
one,
they
didn't
would
they?
have.
I remember watching that. That was a very stylized. It might have been based upon that, but this was quite bad because basically as soon as they walked in their room, the doors locked and they couldn't get out, and there was like mazes in the walls and like trips where they could trap themselves and kill themselves. It was like Saw, but like in the 1800s.
Yeah, this one, the guy, he would rent out the rooms for the World's Fair that was coming around, and he would just kidnap the people and kill them.
Mental, man. But I heard that was also that there's a possibility that guy could have had something either was Jack the Ripper or could have had something to do with him because it was linked. Well, the idea is it was a theory, obviously. But there's so many theories when it comes to Jack the Ripper.
Was it Hotel Cecil?
I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know I don't know why I don't have Google up. I can actually look this stuff up.
But did you know there's actually a murderer of prostitutes that was around during the Second World War which was much worse than Jack the Ripper. But because it was during the war, it was hushed and put under the carpet.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't like a military medic who was trying to learn how to save people's lives and was just practicing on prostitutes because he didn't care or didn't consider them people.
Because they didn't think they didn't put them in the same kind of level as normal people, did they? Well, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them, they were down part of.
Yeah, it was the Twisted Murder Hotel of H.H. Holmes. I was right.
H.H. Holmes, that's him. Yeah, he was linked to Jack the Ripper.
Trapdoors, gas chambers. Yeah, they called it the 100 Rooms. Murder Hotel of H.H. Holmes. I'm looking up right now by Anna Grauer. I can't pronounce her name, but it was published in 2017.
These nuts. Hello, Martin. How are you, Martin? You all right?
Hey, Martin.
Hello, Martin. How's it going, mate? Hope you're all right. Welcome to the podcast.
Martin!
Don't forget to follow.
Flights of stairs that led nowhere because when you were trying to run away, you try to run up the stairs and it would just go nowhere and you get stuck.
But that's quite a trend in America because wasn't the lady, her husband used to make guns, and wasn't she scared? It was a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
She was scared that all the ghosts that her husband's weapons had killed would hunt her down. So she made her house into a maze so the ghosts couldn't find her.
Yep, I remember that story too.
Is that
I forget who she was.
Was it Enfield? Is that an American gun maker?
Springfield? I think it might be Springfield. Springfield Air Goes Crazy. Maybe. Let me look it up.
That's nothing to do with Jack the Ripper, but I just thought about it.
Is that the Jack the Ripper story done? Just so I can put the time down.
Well, yeah, because I've said the one about the Americans.
But I've looked up stuff on Jack the Ripper. Okay, so the article I ended up finding earlier about conspiracies is they have a tendency to be more believable, or they have a tendency to spike when there's a lot of unrest or change in the upper echelons of society, or that there's different societal events that happen. And if you think of conspiracies like Jack the Ripper or something like that, I went and actually Googled it to find out what was going on. There's a lot of shit going on outside right now. But yeah, the entire area was completely being restructured. There's a lot of government turmoil in
Whitechapel.
Yeah, that whole area. Different boroughs were being split up, and there's no accountability whatsoever. All the people who were supposed to be policing there, the police and whoever they would call there, they had no real oversight because all the shit was being restructured, and everything was going crazy. But
that's because obviously with the influx of people from the countries, from, for example, Ireland, and my great grandparents, they all came from, they were Jewish, so they came to London, but they had the Jewish boroughs, they had the Irish boroughs, and they had the old Cockneys. But the old Cockneys were pikeys, so they used to split them up and they used to police their own. That's where you get the north and south divide with the gangsters, because they divide across the river, and that ran straight across Whitechapel. I had a conversation with an American the other day, and no offense, man, that guy pissed me off somewhat right. He said he said that Cockney was an accent for the lower classes and the stupid people. Now, just to put it out there, Cockney isn't. Cockney was it's like slave language. It was used so that they could talk between themselves, but no fucker else could understand. Yeah. I was thinking about that. Sorry, you can go on now. It was at the front of my brain.
Well, yeah, but he was probably saying it's used in that context. But yeah, I get what you're saying. You're actually right. He's just not thinking of it realistically.
Yeah. But it was just a bit funny. That's something saying that the southern accent is only for stupid people. That's me saying that. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, someone did a bit about it. That accent of, when someone talks like this, they seem like a sophisticated Southern gentleman, when in reality, they sound like a fucking retard. I mean,
they always use really big words. I always like that. Yes, now I'm discombobulated right this moment. I don't know where I am. That kind of thing. No, that's a great accent.
They're using words that they don't understand. I don't know. What the hell?
But I think it's probably because they, we've gone completely off the subject, but I think it's because they obviously mixed with certain people and they wanted to be at their level. That's probably what it was. And it's the same with the Cockneys. They wanted to use a language that the bosses didn't understand. And that's where the split was in Whitechapel. See, the thing is, back in the day, in, I think it's New York. Tell me if I'm wrong, please do. But they split the districts up. and the coppers, the police, stay in their district, and as soon as they go over that district line, basically the criminal's gone into the other district. It was the same in that area. So you had a certain amount of beat coppers that would run certain areas. So what Jack the Ripper did, he would jump to different areas of the police so that they weren't communicating with each other.
Yeah, that's kind of like how it is here, because like it's weird because you think you have the way town everything's structured the exact same way. It's just that it doesn't like fit with based on how large it is. Like with big cities, like you have New York City, it's broken up into individual boroughs, but those boroughs are freaking huge.
Yeah.
So those individual boroughs are broken down into individual precincts, and
Yeah.
then those precincts are broken down like they have their areas of communication. And of course, back then, if you didn't have walkie-talkies and you didn't have like actual radios and that stuff like we do now, like you'd run into somebody else's jurisdiction. And like in New York City, it's different because you're all in actually one city and you're all like actually part of the same unit. But like in a town like here, where I'm from, you go into a different town, that comes under an entirely different government.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's what
Like,
it was like in London back then, because obviously London at that time was the biggest city in the world, had the biggest population in the world. So this whole idea of structuring the police force was a new thing. It'd never been done before. So that he also used that to his advantage. So that would go along with the idea that he was linked to somebody powerful. Because to know where those districts were and where those police were going to be, he would have to have been connected in some way. And a doctor would have been connected.
A royal.
A royal doctor would definitely been connected.
or he could have just been lucky. And if he's watching the beat cops, he knows that when those people walk over there every night at the exact same time, because that was part of the problem with policing back in those days is like they broke it down like that, but they kept everything very mechanical. Like, okay, you walk by at this time every single night. So then all you had to do is watch. I'm like, okay, here's their 8 o'clock patrol. And then you just wait for them to walk by and then you do what you do. The structuring of the thing, he didn't have to know that they were restructuring it and that like that. He just had to know that there wasn't going to be somebody there when he got there.
It could have even been a beat cop itself. Like I've always said, like Jack the Ripper is most likely to be a copper.
Because you got to remember, like, how many wars were we in before that? I mean, we had the Boer War before that. We had the First World War. No, not the First World War. Sorry, we had the Zulu Wars. So between that, in that time, those people being in the age of about 30 to 40, they'd probably fought in 2 or 3 wars. Now, the chances of some of them policemen being medical doctors in the armed forces, because it was obviously different then. If you could pick a knife up, you could be a doctor. They could have had some experience with that, and maybe that trauma from that war, or I don't know, trauma that he got turned down by some bird at some point, has now turned him into a killer.
Or even go along with what you're saying, with the connection, like being connected to him. He didn't even have to be actually connected. He could have just been another veteran, like in a bar talking about like, hey, I remember you were in the war and you were in the war. It's like, what's it like being a cop? And then they just kind of, give out all that information because, why not? You're shooting the shit with a, fellow friend, fellow veteran, and it just turns out you're sitting there telling Jack the Ripper how to get away from you guys when you're looking for him.
Yeah, it could have but that's what I mean. That's what it was like then. So, and it also could have been family members. It could have been linked like that. So to link it directly with the royal family, it's just a big fucking job, and there's a lot of holes there where they could have. Can you imagine if Victoria was linked with? I mean, at the time she was the Empress of India, Africa. It would have been such a fucking scandal, and to get to that point. But then again, I suppose her son bunking up with a hooker, a prostitute, would have been a bit of a scandal as well, wouldn't it? So I suppose it's swings and roundabouts, isn't it?
Yeah, they could have been ordered to shut him up.
Yeah, exactly. So they just sent him in to shut him up. It's possible, eh? That's what I mean. I mean, I don't think we'll ever find out. I mean, the time's gone by so much, and there's so many theories out there. I don't think they'll ever know. There was DNA, there wasn't there? They found DNA at one point.
But there's nothing they can do with it. Like they couldn't match it with anybody, and they had no database. It can't be like, verified. I mean, they had plenty of it, but
they had. There's one that they found, and they linked it to a house where supposedly that was it. It was the American guy. They found a rag in the wall or something, and it had one of the victim's blood on it. And it was at some point that H&H guy lived there while he was in London. So that's why that's why most ex-detectives think it was definitely this American guy, because it's circumstantial evidence, obviously, and they can never 100% prove it. And in that boarding house, I mean, hundreds of people could have stayed there. But there was DNA found, and it was linked to one of the murder. They linked it to one of her daughter or daughter's daughter along the line. It was her DNA.
Okay, so H.H. Holmes was in Chicago.
Oh, well, that was a bit far.
Okay. Holmes did not appear in Chicago property records until July of 1818 and April of 1889. The Ripper case took place in August and November of 1888.
1888.
Here in Chicago records between. Oh, so he wasn't in the United States during the time of the Ripper murders.
No, he was in. It was supposed. Well, this is what I heard. He was in London at the time.
Well, this is coming from the other angle, saying like, no, he was. This is the article I'm reading anyway. It's them saying like, no, he wasn't here during that time. Not just like, oh, he was over there. It's just saying that like, no, he wasn't here, wherever the hell he was.
Didn't know where the fuck he was, basically.
Okay. Jeff Mudgett, author of Bloodstains, addresses a crowd at the TEDx event in Vancouver. And he was the one that said that he thinks H.H. Holmes' murder house was a part of the Ripper thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good a theory as any. I think it's a more realistic theory than the royal family being linked to it.
Probably. Because his World's Fair was in 1893, which was what, 5 years later.
But how could you live with that though? I suppose if you kind of split the idea of like prostitutes being people, I suppose you could live with it. But for any normal person having done all those things and
Keyword
then
normal person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like a normal person, it would be very difficult for them to kind of do that. Definitely. Yeah, I think we've done the Jack the Ripper now, haven't we, eh?
Well and truly. We've even put other theories to it as well.
Yeah, just made some up as well as we've gone along.
We've solved the case, guys.
Oh yeah,
what we've done.
Got to get that H guy.
H.H. Holmes, Triple H.